The saturated fat group did have worse results than the unsaturated fat group, but the problem is that the diet still contained carbohydrates.
How convenient for you, Frank. Didn't the unsaturated group also contain carbohydrate? What about the added sugar group? Give me strength. Frank reckons that he debunked Mike the Vegan's diabetes video, so I thought I'd better just take a look.
Before I even start this complete dog crap nonsense,
yes, Frank, you have described your rebuttal perfectly.
The fact is that diabetes cannot occur without carbohydrates present.
The symptoms may not be able to occur, but the disease can manifest. Take Sean Baker, who made himself pre-diabetic eating only meat. His high saturated fat diet has caused intramyocellular lipids, or fats inside muscle cells, to be formed. Now add a small glucose challenge and what's the result? The carbohydrate is stuck in the bloodstream with fat blocking its exit. If I filled the little holes of the sprinkler head of your watering can with lard and the water couldn't get through, would you then blame the water?
Another fact is that Mike the Vegan Soy Boy
Ad hominem
uses a filter on his videos so he doesn't appear as the pasty white ghoul he is.
Another ad hominem. Great arguments for someone with no real argument.
Mike is a pseudo-intellectual that doesn't understand the studies or research he puts forward.
You must relate to him well then, as we'll see throughout this video.
Hey, it's Mike here, and today, animal fat and type 2 diabetes. We're going to flip the script because when you look at the research, it appears that the current paradigm of carbohydrates being the underlying cause of type 2 diabetes is not correct. Nope, today we're going to look at the science and learn the mechanism for how animal fat can cause insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. And this is one of the most common diseases that causes so many issues, and this is the most overlooked cause, and it needs to be talked about more.
Diabetes is one of the most common diseases, and the most common diet is the standard American diet, which is full of vegetable seed oils, processed refined carbohydrates. Only a small percentage of the standard American diet is actually meat or animal fat.
Nope, 26% is meat, eggs, fish and dairy. And many of those added fats are from animal fats, such as lard.
But yeah, let's blame that because vegans want to play with their dogs, dress up in fursuits, play with each other.
Projection.
And we can start by just looking at some sort of mysteries, if you believe in this paradigm, that just wouldn't make any sense at all. And they don't make any sense because the paradigm is wrong. And the first of which is the Adventist vegans, for example, who have ridiculously low risk of all diabetes, 78% lower. And one might think, yeah, these people are probably just healthier. They probably eat less carbs, and that's why they have less diabetes. Well, the reality is that vegans in general, and these vegans as well, actually ate more carbohydrates as a percentage of total calories than the people who ate meat. And in addition, these are people who are actually vegan for religious reasons, which means they're not just trying to be healthy and they're not specifically trying to avoid sugar.
Mike, you're right that the Seventh-day Adventist vegans have lower rates of diabetes.
Great, we can finish the video here. Frank agrees that vegans have far less diabetes than meat eaters. Well done, Frank, you just debunked yourself.
But why didn't you share that they have higher rates of stroke?
Because we well do not. Why do you have a study on your screen that's totally unrelated to the thing you're talking about? You accuse Mike the Vegan of being a pseudo-intellectual who only reads as far as the study's abstract, yet apparently you didn't read as far as the study's abstract. Or the title even. This study is looking for the changes in disease risk for participants after having given birth. And it's not just the vegan group, it's all the groups. If Mike the Vegan is a pseudo-intellectual, how would you describe your level of intelligence, Frankie boy?
Or similar mortality to the average person.
Even if that were true, which is not, again, you're looking at meat eaters, vegetarians and pescatarians lumped in with the vegans.
If a vegan diet was so great, why aren't they immune to heart disease?
Well, the Adventist vegans eat up to 20% of their calories as unhealthy mock meats. If you look at people eating a healthy whole foods vegan diet, we don't just prevent and treat heart disease, we reverse it.
And to even further blow the minds of the carb-phobic, we can look to Walter Kempner's rice diet in the late 30s and 40s, which gave people a ridiculously high-sugar, low-fat diet, which was very unbalanced, yet it managed to reverse people's type 2 diabetes.
This is a complete straw man argument, and it shows that Mike the Vegan doesn't know basic human metabolism. Yes, you could feed someone only rice, and they won't develop diabetes.
And they will reverse their diabetes, don't forget.
And you could feed someone only butter, and they will actually reverse diabetes.
Wrong, or Sean Baker would not be pre-diabetic on his all-meat diet.
The problem is excess energy through the combination of fat and carbohydrates or sugars.
Show the mechanism by way carbohydrate eaten in excess in the absence of saturated fat causes diabetes. Mike is showing studies to back up his claims. Surely you can provide as much, if not more evidence than a pseudo-intellectual. Just anecdotal, of course, but I eat up to 1 kilo of carbohydrate and 6,000 calories per day, and I've never been diagnosed as diabetic or pre-diabetic on my predominantly whole foods, plant-based diet.
While you have that controlled diffusion with glucose, you actually have passive diffusion with these fatty acids where, if there's more in your body, then more can enter the cell. There's no off switch.
Mike, did you read your own study? It literally says that insulin resistance is caused by the result of excess caloric intake and lack of physical activity or energy expenditure.
You're getting better, Frank. At least you're looking at the correct study this time. However, you've got it wrong as usual. The part you've highlighted pertains to what it is that causes obesity. You have confused adipose tissue, fat that's stored under the skin or in certain organs, with intramyocellular lipids. Keep going those sweet cheeks. I'm sure you'll say one thing right by the end of your video.
We know that the main driver of inflammation in the context of fatty acids, fat, that's stored in your body is omega-6 linoleic acid, predominantly in vegetable seed oils.
Yeah, animal foods, particularly chicken and eggs, are high in omega-6. While my whole foods vegan diet is lovely and low.
Obesity causes insulin resistance, aka diabetes, and obesity is caused by altered omega ratios according to the study.
That study is cute and all, but my diet is balanced for omega-3 and 6. What about this study then? An average of £1 per week lost eating ad libitum, i.e. not restricting calories, on a whole foods plant-based diet. It's worth noticing that blood pressure, cholesterol and triglycerides all came down to within the healthy ranges too. And the participants ate as much as they cared for. Try doing that on a meat-based diet.
And now for a simplified illustration of how insulin resistance is caused by these intramyocellular lipids. It starts with the excess fat buildup, those fat droplets within the cell, which then interfere with that insulin receptor. Neil Bernard simply refers to this as being gummed up. We'll get into the details later. That then prevents that glucose gateway from opening. The glucose doesn't make it in, and then your body goes, we need more insulin to open it up for more glucose, and then you got problems. You got big problems.
Mike saying that fatty acids block the glucose signaling is technically correct.
Technically correct? It's either correct or it's not, which it is.
For him to not mention the Randle cycle is misleading. The Randle cycle controls fuel selection in body tissue, involving the competition between glucose and fatty acids for uptake in muscle and fat stores. Fat digestion temporarily impairs the ability of the body to utilize glucose for energy, but glucose can also inhibit fatty acid oxidation in excess. Randle suggests...
Randle may have theorized that back in 1963, but Barnard is reversing diabetes in his patients today, so who gives a what Randle suggests?
That diseases such as diabetes are related to the high concentration of fatty acids and the relationship to abnormalities of carbohydrate metabolism.
And what causes these abnormalities of carbohydrate metabolism? Oh yeah, intramyocellular lipids. Something Randle wouldn't have been aware of over half a century ago. We did discover them 28 years ago though, so you might want to update your sources, old son.
People in the United States aren't overloading their lipid stores on steaks and butter. It's cake and cookies.
Steaks and butter.
hyperpalatable foods, bacon, ice cream.
Wait a minute. I know I've been vegan for the best part of a decade, so just to double check, bacon does still come from pigs, right? And not grow on trees now? You're undermining your own stupid argument by quoting the very foods that you're trying to vindicate.
You aren't going to have high levels of circulating glucose unless you're consuming carbohydrates. You can't say that carbohydrates don't cause diabetes when they are literally required.
Cars are required for car crashes to occur. That doesn't mean that cars themselves are the cause of car crashes, now does it? Jesus Christ.
Ceramides are waxy lipid compounds that are, a harmless part of your cell wall, but also floating around in other places in your body, and in excess, they can become toxic and create issues with insulin signaling glucose properly. It's so bad that from this study, if you can stop the new production of these ceramides, in certain cases, you can actually reverse insulin resistance from diet.
Why aren't you painting a clear picture, buddy? Why aren't you telling your viewers that ceramides are a metabolite of palmitic acid, and that palmitic acid is in no way, shape, or form specific to animal foods?
It is in animal foods though, which is what you eat exclusively. And there is next to none in my whole foods plant-based diet, devoid of oils. This is why my diet has proven to reverse diabetes, while Frank's is horrible in every way imaginable.
It's contained in palm oil, coconut oil, soybean oil, and I would bet a large sum of money that the average person is consuming more palmitic acid from these plant seed oils than animal foods.
Even if that is the case, and as usual you've provided no evidence to back that up, it is in all the foods that you eat all day long. And looking at this study, your magical healing grass-fed meat has more palmitic acid in it than grain-fed does.
Keep in mind that all of the main sources of saturated fat in the US diet, and really other Western diets as well, is animal products. It's all of those cheeses and meats and so on.
So Mike came to the same conclusion I did about palmitic acid being the root cause, but he's being dishonest. He quickly flashed a chart about the sources of saturated fat in the human diet, claimed it's mostly meat, but if we look at what's on that chart, pizza, grain-based desserts, dairy desserts, mixed chicken dishes, processed meats, Mexican mixed dishes, are the majority of the saturated fat intake.
Yes, and the top contributor is cheese, a solely animal-based product. And pure meats appear on there multiple times. What's not on there anywhere? Legumes, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds. Do you see any kind of pattern there, Frank? They are all whole plant foods. Is this all starting to register yet?
But it gets worse for saturated fat, because researchers have gone as far as to title their articles in the journal Diabetes Care as, quote, "Saturated fat is more metabolically harmful for the human liver than unsaturated fat or simple sugars." This study put people into 3 groups. They overfed each of them by 1,000 calories, one through a higher saturated fat diet, one through a lower saturated fat diet, and one through a high refined sugar diet.
I mean, this is ridiculous. He made a baseless claim that the majority of saturated fat is from animal foods in the human diet.
It very obviously is, unless someone was going to gorge themselves on coconut and palm oil. Unless you have data to prove otherwise, do you, Frank? Stupid question.
What's funny about this study is they took 38 overweight people and stuffed them full of even more calories. The saturated fat group did have worse results than the unsaturated fat group, but the problem is that the diet still contained carbohydrates.
How convenient for you, Frank. Didn't the unsaturated group also contain carbohydrate? What about the added sugar group? I do believe that sugar is a form of carbohydrate. Give me strength.
It is crazy that these vegans are so arrogant. They will go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Oh, a vegan diet makes you waste away and lose all your muscle? No, it's actually the best diet for performance athletes.
You eat nothing but animal products, while I eat nothing but plant foods. Who is by far the strongest and biggest out of us, Frank? Wakey wakey!
It is comical how people can create such an illusion on completely fake information, develop such a following. You know, it really shows how susceptible the general population is to misinformation.
Good job for you, or you'd have 0 following. Now click this, or I won't make my next Frank Tufano video where I show how he's now eating tons of sugar-laden honey, as well as his fat-rich death foods. I guess he's trying to give himself diabetes. Wow.